My name is Natalie Tran. I'm 36 years old, the founder and CEO of Arise Biomed, a biotechnology company that specializes in regenerative medicine. After spending most of my adult life buried in clinical trials, sleepless funding rounds, and late nights in a lab coat stained with coffee and failure, my work finally reached the kind of breakthrough I used to only dream about. Our stem cell therapy for spinal regeneration passed phase 3 trials last year. We've saved lives. We've restored mobility, and we've changed the way people see what's possible in modern medicine. But none of that seemed to matter to my family. Growing up in San Jose, California, I was the quiet one, the responsible daughter, the helper. My younger sister, Sabrina, 2 years behind me, was the vibrant one, the one everyone noticed in a room. Sabrina had this ability to make people fall in love with her charm before she even said a word. She was prom queen, she dated quarterbacks, she danced. I dissected frogs. I spent weekends shadowing researchers at Stanford Labs while Sabrina hosted pool parties and sang at charity events. Our parents adored her. And I don't say that with bitterness, just clarity. Whenever we had family over, they'd introduce her as our star and me as the smart one, like an accessory in a lab coat. My awards and biology competitions were impressive, but Sabrina's pageant crowns were incredible. It never felt malicious, just ingrained, like I was supposed to shine in the shadows so she could take center stage. I thought maybe that would change when I started Arise Biomed. I built my company from scratch, cashed out my 401k, moved into a tiny studio where I turned the kitchenette into a lab station. I spent 2 years eating instant noodles and pitching to investors who told me to bring in a real CEO. But I never gave up, and eventually they started listening, then funding, then calling. 2 years ago, we secured a $40 million Series B round, and last fall, our therapy received conditional FDA approval. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just building something real. I was building something revolutionary. And yet, my family still introduced me as Sabrina's sister, as if my name were some optional subtitle in her story. So when Sabrina invited me to her nonprofit's gala this spring, a black tie fundraiser for her mental health charity Serenity Within, I told myself this would be different. She'd asked nicely, said she wanted the whole family there. And I'd recently made a sizable anonymous donation through Arise Biomed to help her secure the venue. $25 million, yes, I know how that sounds. But it wasn't about the money, it was about maybe being seen. Maybe this time I wouldn't be the invisible scientist in the corner. Maybe I'd be part of something, not just a hidden force behind the curtain. My fiancé Daniel had raised his eyebrows when I told him. 25 million and you don't even want your name on it? He asked. That's not a donation, Natalie. That's a gift. And a quiet one. I don't want to make it about me, I said. But if I'm being honest, I did. I just wanted to be part of the family. For once, not as the helper. Not as the support act. Just as Natalie. So when Sabrina sent me a text that read, "So excited you're coming. Just wear something classic, nothing flashy. We don't want to outshine the speakers." I laughed. I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. I still believed this time might be different. I couldn't have been more wrong. The night of the gala, the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco shimmered under a blanket of golden lights. Limousines and Teslas lined the driveway. Camera flashes pulsed like stars at the red carpet entrance as a string quartet played a haunting rendition of Clair de Lune. It was elegant, cinematic, exactly what Sabrina always loved. A place to be admired. Daniel squeezed my hand as we stepped out of our car. I'd worn a floor-length navy silk gown, understated but tailored, with a subtle silver pin at the shoulder. Our company's logo. The only mark of my identity in a sea of designer names. I hadn't intended it to make a statement. But I guess in hindsight, it did. At the check-in desk, a young volunteer, no older than 19, looked up at me with a clipboard smile. "Name, please?" "Natalie Tran," I said. +1. She scanned her list. Her smile faltered. "Oh, right. Hold on 1 second." She clicked something on her tablet, frowned again, then turned to a bin of lanyards. After rummaging for a moment, she pulled out 2 bright yellow staff passes. My stomach tightened. "Sorry," I said, voice calm but clipped. That must be a mistake. I'm not staff. She tilted her head with the kind of pity you reserve for someone who doesn't know their place. You're listed under event operations. See? She flipped the iPad around. Natalie Tran, lab technician support. Beneath it, in smaller gray text, volunteer, logistics assistance. I stared at it. I'd seen plenty of data in my life, but nothing had ever hit me like this digital label. Daniel leaned in. Excuse me, are you sure that's correct? Natalie is the founder of Arise Biomed. She's one of your lead sponsors. The girl blinked. Oh, I didn't realize. Clearly, I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut silk. Could you please check with your coordinator? She nodded and scurried away, heels clicking on the marble like anxious Morse code. Daniel turned to me. You okay? I nodded, but the air felt thinner than it had a minute ago. I looked around. The chandeliers, the pressed suits, the clusters of donors laughing softly over flutes of champagne, and felt the familiar squeeze of being in the room, but not part of it. 10 minutes later, the volunteer returned, this time with a slightly older woman in an earpiece and sleek black blazer. Miss Tran, the woman said, her voice rehearsed and polished. There's been a slight clerical mix-up. You've been assigned a seat at table 14, towards the back near the kitchen. I apologize for the confusion. We'll escort you there now. I said nothing, just followed. Daniel did too, tension humming under his silence. As we weaved through the ballroom, I caught sight of my parents seated near the front with other VIP guests, laughing with a couple who looked like legacy donors. They didn't even glance my way. Then I saw Sabrina. She was standing near the main stage in a blush gown that glimmered under the spotlight, talking to press, charming photographers. When she spotted me, yellow badge still hanging from my wrist, her expression flickered, and then she smiled. Not the kind you give someone you're happy to see. The kind you give someone you've successfully put in their place. We reached table 14. It was half empty, tucked in the shadows near the swinging doors where servers came in and out with trays of food. The centerpiece was plastic. Daniel pulled out my chair for me, but I didn't sit. Instead, I stared at the stage where Sabrina's face was now projected onto the massive LED screen behind her. And now, the MC announced, please welcome the heart and soul of Serenity Within, our founder, Sabrina Tran. Applause erupted. As I stood in the shadows, the woman on stage began thanking her supporters, donors, partners, everyone who had made this possible. The audience roared with approval. My name was never mentioned. Not even once. I stood there at the edge of the ballroom, half in shadow, watching my sister soak in applause that echoed like a drumbeat in my ears. Her voice, smooth, well-practiced, glided over a list of acknowledgments. Corporate sponsors, wellness influencers, anonymous philanthropists. I was that anonymous philanthropist. $25 million. And I had just been seated next to a swinging kitchen door like an afterthought. Daniel sat beside me now, his jaw clenched, his body turned in my direction even though his eyes were fixed on the stage. She erased you, he said quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the erasure had already begun long before this night. This was just the most public version of it. She said I shouldn't wear anything flashy, I murmured, almost to myself. She said she wanted the attention on the cause. Daniel looked at me, brows furrowed. The attention's not on the cause. It's on her. I nodded slowly. That was always the game. I had built a company that was changing lives. She had built a brand that looked good on Instagram, and somehow her curated image had more value to this room than the science that had restored spinal mobility to 47 patients this year alone. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about principle. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved instinctively. Years of CEO-level decision-making had trained me to move with clarity, not rage. I opened my encrypted messaging app and typed a direct note to Amira, Arise Biomed's general counsel. Pull the sponsorship. Immediate reversal. Clause 7B. Public attribution requirement breached. Initiate press statement within 12 hours. Use draft V3. Seconds later, Amira responded with just one word. Confirmed. Daniel watched me, his voice low. Are you sure? I looked at him, and for the first time that night, I smiled. Absolutely. I stood up. I could hear Sabrina shifting gears on stage, introducing the next segment, the unveiling of the donor wall. A massive screen began to lower from the ceiling behind her, displaying logos and names of contributors. The crowd turned in awe as gold lettering scrolled slowly. I watched my sister beam as the heading appeared. Platinum Benefactor, the Aurelius Foundation Diamond Sponsors, Cypress Wellness, Vantage Reach, the Kellis Family Fund. And then, Anonymous, $25,000. That was me, or rather, it had been me. And within an hour, that line would be gone. I turned to Daniel, voice calm. Come with me. We walked quietly toward the rear of the ballroom, passing photographers, tables of donors, and a hallway lined with branded banners and framed testimonials. No one stopped us. No one looked twice. Which was exactly what they had wanted. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to make a spectacle, but I was going to make it known. We exited through a side hall and stepped into the quiet of the courtyard. The fog of the San Francisco night settled in the air like a breath held too long. Daniel reached for my hand. What now? I exhaled. Now we let the silence speak louder than the applause. The courtyard was hushed, lit by garden lamps casting soft golden light over trimmed hedges and marble benches. I stood in silence, listening to the distant applause bleeding through the ballroom walls. Inside, the celebration continued as if nothing were wrong. But something was wrong, and I wasn't going to let it stay hidden anymore. Daniel stepped away to take a call, giving me a moment alone. I scrolled through my inbox. Right on cue, a message from our legal team landed. Subject, contract termination, Serenity. Within Gala sponsorship, attached were the formal documents confirming the reversal of the $25 million donation, citing the public recognition clause and violation of mutual branding terms. We had legal grounds. It was airtight. I had insisted on that clause when we first discussed sponsorship, a silent fallback in case I wasn't just forgotten, but deliberately erased. My hands were steady as I closed the email and turned back toward the building. Inside the hall, the MC had transitioned to the live auction segment. The energy was euphoric, oblivious. I moved quickly but quietly, cutting behind a row of vendor displays and toward the backstage corridor. I didn't want to make a scene, but I needed her to know. Sabrina was standing just off stage, speaking with the event coordinator, clutching a flute of champagne like it was part of her wardrobe. Her expression was bright, glowing, satisfied. When she saw me, her smile faltered, but didn't drop completely. Natalie, she said, her voice carefully modulated. Where have you been? I've been trying to find you. I doubt that, I said evenly. Her gaze flicked to my phone in my hand, then back to my face. What's wrong? I just came to give you this. I held out the screen showing the signed document. It's official. The sponsorship has been revoked. The donation is being pulled. For a second, she didn't react. She simply blinked. Then came the laugh. Sharp, dismissive. You're joking. I'm not. She turned slightly, angling herself so no one passing by could see her face. You're doing this now? In the middle of my gala? You really can't handle not being the center of attention, can you? That hit deeper than she knew. I didn't flinch. This isn't about attention, it's about respect. You took my name off everything. Put me in the back with a lanyard-marked support staff. You told the press this entire event was funded by a European consortium. Because that's what the branding strategy called for. She snapped, the mask slipping. You're a scientist, Natalie, not a PR strategist. You wouldn't understand. And yet, I said quietly, I wrote the check. Her mouth opened, then closed. This isn't just petty, she hissed, eyes narrowing. It's unstable. It's vindictive. No, I said, my voice like glass. It's a boundary. Something you and I have never had. Her eyes flicked toward the stage. Do you know what you've done? The donor wall, the auction items, everything depends on that money. I know, I said simply. And you don't care? I care, I said, just not about your optics anymore. She stepped closer. You think this makes you powerful? That this moment somehow proves you matter more than me? I didn't answer. Instead, I took a small breath, looked her directly in the eye, and said, "You knew exactly what you were doing when you assigned me to the operations list. This wasn't an oversight, Sabrina. This was deliberate. You couldn't stand the thought of me being publicly thanked for something you wanted credit for." She said nothing. The silence was louder than denial. "I'm not invisible anymore," I said softly. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, the lights dimmed for the next presentation. A spotlight lit up the stage. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed to be in it. Because I had just stepped into my own power. And that light was mine now. By the time Daniel and I got home that night, my inbox had become a war zone. Press inquiries, board members forwarding media mentions, a flurry of frantic messages from Serenity Within's communications team. One of them had even CC'd our investor relations director at Arise Biomed, demanding clarification. I didn't answer any of them. I sat at my kitchen island, barefoot, hair pinned back, still in my navy gown, holding a glass of water, like it might steady the storm that had already begun. On the TV in the living room, Daniel had muted a local late-night broadcast, but I could still read the scrolling headline, "Breaking $25 million. Anonymous donation pulled from charity Gala amid internal conflict." The footage was grainy. It showed Sabrina standing backstage, her face tight, speaking sharply to someone off-screen. Then a reporter cut in, speculating on whether one of the lead silent donors had withdrawn support over a contractual breach. They didn't name me. They didn't have to. By morning, I woke up to three things: a voicemail from my mother, an email marked urgent from Serenity Within's finance team, and a trending Twitter hashtag, #TheInvisibleDonor. It took me a moment to realize that was me. Someone, probably a guest, had leaked part of the incident. Someone else had pieced together screenshots from previous events where Arise Biomed was subtly linked to Serenity Within. A few sharp-eyed bloggers noticed my absence from the donor list, despite being spotted at the event. Then someone posted, "Imagine being erased from your own 25 Elmauer donation. The level of control some families try to maintain is wild." The story exploded. But what shocked me wasn't the virality. It was the messages I began receiving from other women. Dozens, then hundreds. Emails, LinkedIn notes, even handwritten letters sent to my office. They all said some version of the same thing. "I know how it feels to be the one who makes it all work, and still be treated like you don't belong. Your silence on stage was louder than 1,000 speeches. Thank you for walking away when they refused to see you." And maybe the most unexpected one of all, from a name I hadn't seen in 2 decades, Diana Tran, my father's sister, my aunt, the one no one ever talked about. Her message was short. "You did what I couldn't. Call me." At Arise, the team's response was something I hadn't expected. No panic, no blame, just quiet, competent coordination. Gregory, my COO, walked into my office that afternoon with a printed list of calls and outreach from other potential partners. "Apparently," he said, dropping the pages gently on my desk, "Serenity's loss is the industry's gain." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He grinned. "Coastal Therapeutics wants a demo. And Apex Horizon just asked if we'd be open to private equity support for international scaling. Oh, and there's an inquiry from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They saw the coverage and want to explore research collaborations." I stared at him. "It's like, by finally saying no to being invisible," I said slowly, "the world decided to see me." He nodded. "Sometimes that's all it takes. One public line in the sand." That night, Daniel cooked pasta and handed me a glass of red wine as we sat on the balcony, city lights flickering around us. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "I regret waiting this long to say something." He reached over and touched my wrist gently. "You didn't just say something, Natalie. You said everything, without raising your voice, without burning the building down, and they still heard it." I thought about Sabrina, about our parents, About the version of myself I'd carried into that ballroom. Silent, hopeful, still waiting for permission to matter. That version was gone now. And in her place stood someone no longer asking, only choosing. The phone rang just after 7 p.m. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew the voice the moment it spoke. Natalie, it's Mom. For a second, I didn't respond. The last time she'd called me out of the blue was to remind me that Sabrina's birthday party theme was lavender, and that I shouldn't wear anything that might clash. Now her tone wasn't light. It was tight, controlled, and it cut straight to the point. Why would you do this to your sister, to the family? There it was. No how are you. No question about how I felt standing in the shadows of a gala I paid for. Just blame. I didn't do anything to anyone, I said calmly. I revoked a business transaction because its terms were violated. It's not just business, Natalie, she snapped. This was your sister's night. She worked so hard, and you turned it into a scandal. You embarrassed us. Did I? I asked softly. Or did I just finally stop accepting being erased? There was silence on the other end, then quieter. You didn't need to make it public. I didn't, I replied. I walked out. I didn't say a word on stage. I didn't call the press. I just said no. Everything else happened because people noticed what you all didn't. Natalie. Her voice cracked a little, and I could tell she wasn't used to me holding this line. We've always supported you in our own way. In your own way, I repeated, staring out the window at the dark sky. You mean quietly, privately, conveniently. You never introduced me as your daughter, the scientist, the founder, the woman who built a company that gives people their lives back. That's not fair. What's not fair, I interrupted, my voice steady but sharper now, is being told my whole life to let Sabrina have her moment, as if my existence was some kind of spotlight theft. I've spent decades shrinking myself to fit this family's narrative. I'm done. I could hear her breathing. Then, softly, almost like a confession, she whispered, She's always been the more fragile one. We thought you could handle it. Something inside me stilled. You thought I could handle being ignored? Being used? Being humiliated in front of 300 people? No, she whispered. We thought you didn't need us. I swallowed hard. I never said that. But you never asked for us either, she said. I closed my eyes. Because maybe she was right about that. I'd stopped asking for recognition a long time ago, and I had taught myself that if I just worked hard enough, I wouldn't need it. But that didn't mean I didn't want it. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Sabrina. I stared at the name for a long time before answering. She didn't wait. Are you happy now? She asked, her voice ragged. No, I replied, but I'm not ashamed either. There was a pause. Then, unexpectedly, her voice cracked. I panicked. What? That night, I saw your name on the guest list as a sponsor and I panicked. I knew everyone would ask me who you were, how I got you to donate that much. And I didn't want to admit that I didn't. That you did it without being asked. That you did it better than me. The words hit me like cold water. So you deleted me? I asked. I tried to make it seem seamless, she said, barely audible now. Like you were part of the support team, the quiet genius in the background, the role you always played. That role was never mine, I said. It was assigned to me. She didn't argue. Why didn't you just tell me that? I asked. Why not be honest? Because if I admitted you were better at this than me, she whispered, then who would I be? There it was, the crack in her mask, the fear behind the spotlight. For the first time, I didn't feel rage or bitterness. I felt tired. I don't want to be better than you, Sabrina, I said gently. I just want to be seen as me. And that's something you and this family have never allowed. Silence. Then, what now? That's up to you, I replied. But if I'm in this family, it'll be as an equal, not a footnote. I ended the call before she could respond, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally speaking my truth. On my own terms. It started with a knock on my office door. Gregory leaned in, holding a single envelope. This came in the mail. Hand-addressed. No return label. I figured it wasn't junk. I took it slowly, heart already tightening. The handwriting was familiar in a way that made my chest ache. Inside was a single folded sheet of ivory stationery and a business card tucked behind it. Diana Tran, Principal Designer. Tran and Company Interiors, Los Angeles, CA. My father's sister. The one we never talked about. The one who vanished from family holidays the year I turned 12. Her note was handwritten in dark blue ink. Elegant. Firm. Natalie. What you did at that gala took courage. I watched from a distance, same as I've always watched. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud of the Tran name again. Your father will say I left the family, that I walked away. The truth? I was pushed out. I started a company too, built it from the ground up. Was told it was a hobby, just like your mother described yours. It's a cycle, and you broke it. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. Dinner's on me. Diana. I sat there holding the card for a long time, emotions tangled in my throat. All these years, I'd believed I was the first woman in the family to challenge the hierarchy. But I wasn't. I was just the first to get heard. And maybe the first to stay. That evening, I met Diana at a quiet bistro tucked into a hillside in Sausalito. She wore all white and no makeup, her silver hair pulled into a sleek knot. She had the kind of presence that didn't ask for attention, but received it anyway. You look just like your grandmother, she said after we hugged. Same fire behind the eyes, same stubborn spine. I didn't know she had fire, I said, surprised. She did, Diana smiled. She just wasn't allowed to show it. Over dinner, she told me her story, how she'd spent a decade helping build Tran Construction, only to be pushed aside when my grandfather retired and passed the business to my father. They told me I was too emotional for contracts, she said, sipping her wine, and too domestic to handle negotiations. So I left, took my savings, built something on my own terms, but I lost a family in the process. Her voice didn't shake when she said it, but mine did when I replied. I always thought I was alone in this. You're not, she said gently. You never were. They just made you believe it. The following week, something remarkable happened. 3 new clients signed with Arise Biomed. 2 press outlets requested interviews about ethical sponsorship. And Apex Horizon, the same firm that had once passed on investing in us during our Series A, asked for a second meeting, this time offering terms we would set. Daniel watched as I read through the proposal, shaking his head with an amused smile. Who knew, he said, that all it took to expand your company's future was getting humiliated at a gala? I smiled. Correction, it wasn't the humiliation. It was refusing to stay there. That night, I updated the mentorship program I'd been quietly funding. I renamed it Visible, an acronym: Voice Integrity, Strength, Independence, Boundaries, Leadership Empowerment. And under the logo, I added a new tagline: You deserve a seat at the table, and if they won't make space, build your own. The message came from Scott. Simple, plain. Dinner, just the family. Sunday, 6 p.m., Dad wants to talk. Please come. Just the family. Funny how for most of my life, that phrase felt like a locked door I kept knocking on. Now, it felt like a room I could choose to walk into or not. I showed the text to Daniel that night as we folded laundry. You going? He asked. I paused. I don't know, part of me says I owe them nothing. He nodded. And the other part? The other part says I don't need to go back to prove anything, but I also don't need to avoid it to protect myself anymore. So I went. Not for them. For me. Sunday dinner was at my parents' home. A pristine colonial with cream trim and a rose garden that had always looked too perfect to touch. I wore slate gray, sleek, structured, confident, not soft, not apologetic. Daniel walked beside me, his hand firm in mine. Inside, everyone was already seated. My father at the head of the table, my mother next to him, her smile practiced but brittle. Scott, Sabrina. No one said anything when I entered. I pulled out a chair at the side, not the far end. No one moved to stop me. That in itself was new. The meal began in near silence, the clink of forks on plates, shallow attempts at small talk. Then, as the salad was cleared, my father set down his napkin. I want to say something. Everyone looked up. He cleared his throat, clearly rehearsed. Last month's events were not our finest hour, and I'm not going to pretend we didn't make mistakes. I waited. But, he continued, your reaction, Natalie, canceling a major donation, creating a public spectacle, was deeply damaging to Sabrina and to us. Sabrina looked away. My mother looked down. Only Daniel looked directly at me. I nodded slowly. I understand that's how it felt, I said. But I want to be clear. What I did wasn't about hurting you. It was about stopping the hurt. For me. My father frowned. But the press, the backlash. I didn't call the press, I replied. I walked out quietly. They came because the silence was louder than the applause. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, calmly but firmly. For years, you taught me that keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That family loyalty meant not speaking up when I was hurt. That love looked like invisibility. But I don't believe that anymore. The room went still. I'm not here to apologize, I said. I'm not here for closure. I'm here because I'm done waiting to be accepted. I'm done measuring my worth by how small I can make myself for your comfort. Silence. Then Scott, softly, like it hurt to say, she's right. My father turned to him. What? She's right, he said again, stronger. We all benefited from her silence, from her support, and we never gave her credit because we didn't want to admit we needed her. Sabrina's eyes welled. Her mascara stayed intact, but only barely. My mother reached for her glass, then set it down without drinking. I stood. I appreciate being invited, I said gently. But from now on, I'll be at the table only when I'm invited as an equal, as myself. I turned to leave. But before I could step away, my mother's voice broke the silence. Natalie. I turned back. She stood slowly, eyes glassy. I don't know if I know how to be that mother yet, but I want to try. I gave a small nod. That was enough for now. Outside, Daniel took my hand. How do you feel? Lighter, I said. And I meant it. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting at the edge of someone else's story, hoping for a line. I was writing my own. 3 weeks later, Arise Biomed launched its global mentorship program under the name Visible. Within 48 hours, we had 600 applications from women scientists around the world, many of them first generation, many of them invisible in their own families. I read every single one, because I knew how they felt. But more importantly, I knew now what to say back. You are not too much, you are not too ambitious, you are not a problem to be managed. You are the proof that brilliance doesn't need permission to exist. And maybe your seat at the table isn't missing. Maybe it's just waiting for you to build it.